Dear colleagues, students, and all drama lovers, welcome to the first of our webinars in English literature organized by Doğuş University English Language and Literature Department. Today, our guest speaker is Dr. Sibel DİNÇEL of the TOBB University of Economics and Technology, Ankara. Welcome to our session, Dr. DİNÇEL.
Thank you. Welcome.
It's my pleasure today to host a colleague, an academic, a classmate, and a friend. Let me introduce your academic background for our audiences. Dr. DİNÇEL received her BA, MA, and PhD from Hacettepe University in the field of English literature. She has written articles. She has published articles in national and international journals. She has delivered conference papers in national and international conferences, and her main subject field is British drama. Both her MA and PhD theses are on British drama. And recently she has been working on a book in Turkish titled Literary Movements, Gender and Contemporary British Drama. And today, Dr. DİNÇEL's title is also Literary Movements, Gender and Contemporary British Drama. The platform is yours, Dr. DİNÇEL.
Thank you very much for this lengthy introduction. I'm happy to be here joining a sort of conversation-like presentation with my colleague and friend and classmate. Thank you very much. Now, actually, I would like to begin expressing my heartfelt love and gratitude to Mustafa Kemal Atatürk today for providing us, Turkish women, with female suffrage 86 years ago today, December the 5th, 1934, which was earlier, actually, than most of other countries. Since our subject is gender, so I wanted to say this. Thank you, Atatürk.
Thank you, Dr. DİNÇEL. Thank you.
Thank you. I used to have this presupposition about literature in general, and actually with the exception of feminist literature, that it is supposed to offer new outlooks on life that would stimulate a betterment of humanity based on equality, sisterhood and brotherhood, and liberty. Well, yet I realized that no such thing happens, and that the situation is actually not getting any better. So now I'm going to talk about this disillusionment of mine. Now, as for literary movements of contemporary times, I intend to start from the post-war period, because before the 50s and 60s in Britain, it is not really possible to talk about any major literary movements applicable to the study of British drama. Well, of course, starting from the beginnings of the 20th century, I think there emerged in a broader sense two major literary movements, that of modernism and postmodernism. However, if we are to apply these movements to the study of British drama, we have to make rearrangements in the established knowledge applicable, I think, only for British fiction and poetry. So what I'm suggesting here is modernist British drama starts in Britain in the 1950s and it continues until the 1990s, and postmodernist British drama starts thenceforward, that is since 1990s until today. Well, of course, there may be some exceptions to the rule. That is always in my mind. Now, under the category of modernism, I can name the following sub-movements of literature. That is, firstly, Angry Young Men, we're all familiar with, absurd, postcolonial, and perhaps Freudian literary approach, because it is not really named as a movement in itself. And as for postmodernist literature in general, we can name the in-your-face movement that is very widely used in drama. And it is actually a reflection of the young people's reaction towards contemporary chaos, which is actually, this reaction is usually in the form of a criticism through open representation of the evils, problems in the society. And this attitude, actually, I will talk at the end of my paper, that directly leads these young people towards a dystopic mentality, unfortunately. And for the last postmodernist dramatic moment, I have in mind the dystopian drama, dystopian movement, maybe is the term that could be applied, because we see, at least in all forms of literature, the same mentality. Now, for the issue of gender of my presentation, perhaps we should just remember that when we say gender, we mean a socially constructed set of behaviors that are attached to our sexes. The binary oppositions of all positive effect are unfortunately attributed to the male, whereas all the negatives are attributed to the female. And there's a problem with this. Of course, the first is that looking at life in binary oppositions creates boundaries between groups of people and leads to prejudice and discrimination. And secondly, it creates a fear of the opposite group as a threat, as the other. And thirdly, it establishes, reaffirms differences between groups of individuals, such as class and or gender differences within cultures themselves. So very simply, perhaps a look at those binary oppositions could go like the male is strong and female is weak, active, passive, angry, calm, reliable, unreliable, rational, emotional, aggressive and shy, courageous and frightened, and decisive or hesitant, protector, protected, manipulator and manipulated, ruler, ruled, and the subject and object.
Colonizer and the colonized.
That's another story.
Yes. Yes.
And actually, these set of behaviors, gender-wise, are no good, neither for the female, that is obvious, nor for the male. But I will, for the sake of the scope of my presentation here, I will talk about only the female gender roles that are, in fact, sadly, highlighted or confirmed by the patriarchal indoctrinations that sometimes do exist within and sometimes don't exist within contemporary literary movements. But in either case, the playwrights, either by an exemplary open representation of these gender roles or by not making any comments on face of such gendered biases, they actually contribute to the reaffirmation of these gendered injustices. And actually, some people say not reacting is actually to make the audience see and learn and not repeat doing the same evils. But I think it is a very optimistic outlook. So actually, gendered biases are, I think, are getting established more and more, and against women's freedom and existence even in general. Now, so far so good in the realm of British drama after the 50s. I'm sure everybody is acquainted with the angry young men movement. That is, in parentheses, sometimes referred to in parallels with kitchen sink drama, because they both talk about the lives of the laborers, lower middle classes, etc., etc. So the name of this movement actually struck me. Look Back in Anger is the forerunner of this movement with, well, it is John Osborne's play, but the Angry Young Men movement seems to say that it's only men who are allowed to get angry. Well, as the gender role requires, in the play we have this protagonist, Jimmy Porter, and he has a right to get angry and disillusioned with his wife, Alison, for not showing any reaction to the social and political issues, actually the headlines he keeps on reading, and also with his wife's family. And they represent upper-class military because he himself belongs to the working class. So first of all, in order to get her hand in marriage, he had to fight off those military upper-class persons. And actually, here, interestingly enough, the wife was also interested in him because of a kind of resentment that she felt against her own social stands, but Jimmy never knew about this, so he keeps on insulting, actually, Alison throughout the play, and keeps on reminding her of her place as a woman. One of the very unthinkable adjectives she uses is pusillanimous. It's a reference to women's genitals. Actually, it refers to, in real life, to a person who is acting cowardly. So he's trying to belittle her in front of Cliff and also in front of the audience, the world. So by doing this, he creates boundaries between himself and Cliff, and also himself and Chris as men and Alison as women. So he's actually leading his friend and the prejudice and discrimination while establishing the difference between men and women in gendered form. Now, in this way, I think Jimmy has also psychological reasons. He experiences a kind of fear, which he conducts to his audience, which is Cliff and us, to consider the opposite sex as a threat and as the other. And actually, at the end of the play, Cliff exists no more. Perhaps he is scared off by Jimmy's indoctrinations that she is a threat. She is the other. Now, okay. Now, as for the lack of money from which men were allowed to suffer in Look Back in Anger or in the Angry Young Man movement, we can say that, in fact, Alison is quite aware of this, and she accepts the fact that they earn money from a sweet stall in the local market, which is surely beneath Alison's station in life, as well as Jimmy's education, we might say. So the very name of the movement tells us it does not concern women, because gender-wise, women are not expected to be angry or aggressive. They're expected to be calm and comforting, as Alison was actually at the beginning and also at the end. So at the end, the role of women are underlined, reaffirmed. And Helena, interestingly enough, the feminist friend who arrives in their homes to for a while, she defends the feminist women's rights. She manages to persuade Alison to leave her husband, but in the end, as Alison goes away, she settles as if she were the wife of Jimmy, and she's so happy to have led a gendered wifely position for a while. Furthermore, in the play, again, it was indicated as if Jimmy's business, he was protesting against the welfare state opportunities, in inverted commas, turning into negatives. And actually, the negatives of that, according to Osborne, actually, the playwright, was to cause negative effects on patriarchal family structure. And the divorce rates at that time showed that they were in the increase. So Osborne had to save the family unit in Britain. So despite the unspoken promiscuity of Jimmy, and despite the lack of any human contact between husband and wife, they are settled back as husband and wife, not on equal terms, based on mutual respect. So the second trend of literature applicable to drama is the theater of absurd. 1950s, we are aware of Beckett. And Beckett, and of course we can talk about Europe, but again, concentrating on Britain. Beckett, inspired by Albert Camus' assessment in The Myth of Sisyphus in 1942, that he believed that human situation is absurd, devoid of purpose. Actually, Sisyphus is an unhappy person, but sometimes, actually, also Beckett thinks so, he can be described as happy, as in the case of the Happy Days and Winnie's position. Because interestingly enough, actually, because this happiness in Camus' description is that Sisyphus makes his own choices and tricks death and deserves to be punished for it, and he takes it as a man. But Beckett's person who takes it as a human being, I say, but actually she takes it as a woman. Now Beckett's explanation is that, I'm quoting, explaining the plight, the happiness of the play's main character. Playwright Beckett said, well, I thought that was the most dreadful thing that could happen to anybody. And I thought, who would cope with that and go on singing? Only a woman. So we have here Beckett's gendered set of mind. So Winnie, the 1950s typical wife and homemaker, she is aware of problems going on. She is, for instance, out of toothpaste. That's a disaster. She's also running out of lipstick. So actually, the problem is that they're all, both husband and wife, Winnie and Willie, they're buried up to here in the sort of setting, in the production of the play. So it is not really possible to be happy. So she can be happy. And she actually confronts and accepts the confinement of the patriarchs of her society. So she is not to answer questions like, who am I? What is my real nature or identity? What's the meaning of life? So she doesn't go beyond the society's gender roles in answering them. As for Willie, the male character, he doesn't seem to bother answering any of these questions because he's a man. He doesn't move. And also the production doesn't let him move. He says only a few words and takes out sounds. And also, neither of them are asking real questions about a greater purpose behind creation, like in the existentialist philosophy that we're going to get in. And what is death? What happens when I die? So they are not really philosophers. And but I suspect behind the silence of Willie, the male character, what Beckett had suggested gender-wise, I have a question mark there. So, because wisdom is always sometimes defined by silence. So we see here the movement's infinite number of possibilities for my dream to come true. That is the betterment of the society's welfare in terms of gender. Yet the movement becomes a tool for a reconfirmation of traditional gender roles in the hands of Beckett, for instance. Hence, Winnie, mostly in lengthy monologues, discusses her life and is waiting. And I don't know what she's waiting for, but we have here the symptoms of the existentialist philosophy, like in the case of Vladimir and Estragon, the well-known characters of Waiting for Godot. Now, Jean-Paul Sartre is the forerunner of existentialist philosophy, and in his existentialism, I think blended with Simone de Beauvoir's feminism, is there, but it doesn't help Winnie either, because as Beauvoir had argued, becoming a woman, in other words, a gendered human being, is difficult in distinctive ways, because history, literature, psychoanalysis, and biology presented women with incompatible myths of femininity instead of encouraging them to become free, fallible, and fully human. So Jean-Paul Sartre here is asking, why does God, if he is there, allow such fractions? What is the nature of God? Okay, going very quickly, since 22 minutes have passed, to the next trend of literary movement, that is Freudian literary trend in British drama. And I think we have stronger confirmations of the gender roles in written under such it's just possible, of course, I should say, to confirm the gender roles. But I think because of my timing, I will skip Freud, and I hope that he won't suffer in his grave from constellation anxiety. So, post-colonial British drama, even though this trend is formulated as an attempt to defend the rights of the immigrants, it still reaffirms the gender roles, but this time within their indigenous cultures, and even with more strict rules compared to the host country, that is England. So a playwright like Hanif Kureishi, while trying to defend the immigrants' rights, quote, to get proper education, find proper jobs, earn good money, and even practice freely a homosexual relationship. The immigrant, unquote, the immigrant he's talking about here is a man, not a woman. Therefore, he leaves the job to Ruxana Ahmed or to Mira Seal. They are the Black feminists writing post-colonial drama. So in My Beautiful Laundrette, while Ömer finds a means of survival with Johnny through all these setbacks, the women characters like Tanya, Nasser's daughter, has to run away to find freedom. Nasser's wife Bilquis had to cast spells to get rid of her husband's lover, Rachel. And Rachel herself cannot survive without a man's financial support, even as a white female. So actually, when the play ends, neither racism nor the gendered setbacks of both the white British society and the Pakistani society have come to an end. Instead, we're shown a reaffirmation of these roles and the impossibility of a change, at least not yet. So now I will talk about the two postmodernist trends in literature, in your face and dystopian trend, perhaps put them together for the sake of timing. It is in your face actually is a form of drama, according to Alex Sears. Not for me, by the way, but I think it has become a movement because there are poems, novels, literally, quote, blowing up in the reader's audience's face. This is Sears's words. It first appeared in 1990s and is often regarded as a, quote, response from Thatcher's children to their own sociopolitical and sociocultural context. Now, it is the work of young playwrights who break with conventional theatrical codes to confront the vulgar and the shocking. In order to affect the audience, they have certain tricks. They put aggressive material on stage, and they challenge all the representational norms and place the spectator out of his comfort zone. Now, in your face, according to Oxford Dictionary, is a slang word suggesting scorn, derision, boldness, aggressiveness, provocative. So actually, when we put these terms or evaluate these terms within gender, they're all appropriate to the male. So the exclamations of all these find their expression in works, even in a play like Blasted. Actually, nothing changes, and even a playwright like Sarah Kane lets it go. Actually, she let go of everything. That's another story. At the beginning of her play, there is a sexual harassment scene of Kate by her former boyfriend, Ian. And there are more and more of sexual harassments in the play. And this time, we also have Ian being raped by another man, a soldier. And although for some people this may look as a payback, yet it is a reconfirmation of the gender role of a man who rapes. And if he cannot find a woman, he rapes another man. And it is in military concepts, it is considered as manly behavior. So other types of violence are included in the play, which actually Sarah Kane borrowed from actual events of the Bosnian War that took place in 92 till 95, For instance, Ian's eye being sucked off and eaten by the soldier. And his rape is another case. But all of these, and also the eating of a baby by Ian, these are actual events borrowed, facts actually borrowed from the Bosnian War. And so all these violent actions, unfortunately, belong to men. And they are, in fact, part of their gender roles, or I call testosterone roles. And at the end of the play, Kate acts also in accordance with her gender role, because even though she is treated badly and as a woman, whatever the connotations are you can think of, even though she's raped, and she is still at the end willing to take care of a baby and is willing to take care of an Ian who is now a crippled man. So in the blasted incidents of rape, I quote, highlight, exacerbate and solidify the unevenness of power distribution, which is actually due to gender roles between men and women in the postmodern world, and provides a new perspective at what we might call, quote, rape in general, quote, a transhistorical phenomenon of rape as a practice of violence towards the female victim, unquote. So there are things to elaborate, but I will stop here. For lastly, the dystopic trend, which also became extra popular with the pandemics of today. And I've also listened to the conversation of you and Emrah from Cappadocia University about the issue, and it was very interesting. And so I can say that as the young generations are disillusioned by the horrific destructions of their world in which they are to live, they were planning to live in, only they see that it is destroyed and only the fittest may survive in it. And I actually feel horrified by the way that they express this disillusionment, but they are completely right. Now, actually, they were doing this even before the pandemics came out, so I cannot imagine what they're doing with the material of dystopia, with the theme of dystopia nowadays. So I am, in the middle of all that, a frightened stranger in the world that is depicted by Lucy Kirkwood in her plays such as Tinderbox. And Kirkwood is a young contemporary British playwright, I think about in her 30s or something. In her plays, there are depictions of dystopias which are unfortunately man-made, not woman-made, and unfortunately mankind, not womankind, is still in a continual habit of competing for power and justifying their means for acquiring it. This man does not seem to realize or acknowledge the fact that he is the very means of driving the world towards an inextricable dystopian existence or condition. Now, hence, the patriarch shows no feelings of remorse for having created an environmental dystopian future as well in Lucy Kirkwood's Tinderbox. And there actually we see the playwright relating the oppression and domination of all marginalized groups, including women, to the oppression and domination of nature, interestingly, such as animals, land, water, and air. So in most of the dystopian drama, there is a tendency to underline environmental destruction, which is in fact identified as female as opposed to the male destructor. For example, we have terms like Earth Mother, Mother Nature. So these are put well into the dystopic plays of, for instance, Lucy Kirkwood. In Kirkwood's Tinderbox, there is scarcity of water, there is scarcity of food. They just get to eat, for instance, meat that is rotten, that stinks, there are worms in it. They take it as something precious in the play. So there are scenes of such scarcity of everything. Yet men act like men and women act like women. But we see the energy within the females in those plays, of Kirkwood's plays at least, promising a change. But for better or worse, we shall see. Thank you. That's the end of my presentation. I hope I didn't bore you much.
It was very stimulating and very challenging speech, Dr. DİNÇEL. Thank you very much. I just want to add something. Lucy Kirkwood's, one of her plays, it felt empty when the heart goes, but it feels all right now. It's all right now. It was translated into Turkish and it was performed by Talimhane Tiyatrosu actors and actresses in Istanbul. It's a beautiful play. It's a beautiful translation and modern translation, localization. And if the audiences, if our students or drama lovers are interested in after the pandemic, they can watch. It's a beautiful play, and Lucy Kirkwood is a very promising woman playwright. In the meantime, I'm checking the messages.
But by the way, I cannot see you, Gülşen. Yes, now, yes, okay.
I'm checking the messages coming from our audiences, and 1, 2, 3. 3 questions. The common point in those questions is the difference between in-your-face theater and post-dramatic theater. This is mostly confused by the drama students. Can you once again underline the difference between in-your-face and post-dramatic theater, Dr. DİNÇEL?
Okay, thank you for this striking question. Actually, I was also, perhaps you're also asking this silently because you have yourself been a contributor to this post-dramatic theater book in Turkish, edited by Professor
Bozar. She has just written a message. She congratulates us.
Yes.
Thank you, Professor Bozar. Thank you.
Thank you
For listening to us.
So we just remember our teacher, professor by name. So you've been actually saying, well, it is Lehman's theory. I realize that post-dramatic, the term itself, I think is a term that is applicable only to technique of the play, because it is a breakdown with the traditional 4 elements that are necessary to make a text a dramatic text. That is the characters, setting, action or plot, and the dialogue. So there's no such typical dialogue as it used to be. Post-dramatic dialogue between or among characters is not traceable. It is not possible to catch. For instance, like in Mark Ravenhill's Pool with No Water. It's a striking example where we have voices as characters. So, or a setting, it is usually universal, it is unknown. Or a dialogue, we don't really know who is talking to whom, who's referring to whom, and there's no this cause and effect relationship with between conversations, between people, among people, actually. So there is this break up with the traditional sense of a dramatic text. So post-dramatic, dramatic texts are gone. They are history. Now it is post-dramatic era, technique-wise. But in your face is a kind of trend of drama. It can also be considered as a technique, but it is extra a thematic term, because post-dramatic is not a thematic term in my opinion. So I'm objecting to that. So I wanted to perhaps underline the difference between two terms. Yes.
It was a very clear-cut difference. Thank you, Dr. DİNÇEL. Thank you for being here with us today. Thank you very much for your very stimulating and challenging speech. I wish you and I wish you all a nice weekend and good health. Thank you.
I hope we didn't bore you, listeners.
No, you didn't. You opened new paths in many of our audiences' mind. Thank you once again.
Thank you very much, Gülşen.